Hello and welcome to the What Women Want Today podcast. You might be asking yourself right about now, well, what do women want? I mean, we're pretty complex creatures, right? Well, I think we want it all, and I'm here to explore it with you. My name is Terry Kellums. I'm your host. Go grab your favorite beverage. I've already got my glass of wine, and let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the What Women Want Today podcast. My name is Terry Kellums. I am your host. Today I have a very special guest joining me. Her name is Jill Phillips. Jill has a very interesting story to share with us today. Jill, I'm so excited to have you on the show today. I can't wait for you to share with my audience such a fascinating book and a lot of interesting twists and turns along the way. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
So I can tell by your accent, as I'm sure everyone else can, that you are from the UK, right?
Yes, but I've spent 30 years in Canada as well.
But you didn't pick up any of that accent.
Oh,
Jill.
yes, I've been back here 2 years. It doesn't take long to disappear. They think I still have an accent, by the way.
They do.
Oh, yeah, very much
that's
so.
Interesting.
Yeah. People say, oh, yes, I could tell you that you've lived somewhere else. Yeah.
Well, Jill, let's start out with you giving us a little bit of the life of Jill Phillips.
Okay. Well, as you said, I am originally from London, born here. I basically lived my first 30 years in London, then 30 years in Canada. I come from a very working class background, so you barely have enough money to make ends meet. But Mum was very, very determined that we would have a much better life than she had. And she sort of broke the mold in a sense, because she believed in education for girls in particular. Back in the 1960s and 70s, girls weren't supposed to have an education because they were just going to go on and have a family, look after the babies, and then the man would be out earning the living. So Mum was a little different, and I think in turn I've become a little different because of that. She sort of went against the stereotypes of the day. So in a nutshell about me, we moved from London to Bexleyheath, which is ironically where I'm sitting right now, which is on the outskirts of London, so that I could have a better education. And I eventually decided after I left school to be an occupational therapist. So I got an occupational therapy degree, first person in the whole family to have any sort of further education. And then I got married, moved to Canada, and lived in Canada for 30 years. I was a hospital manager. Hadn't written anything other than I wrote my thesis for my master's degree, which was only in my early 50s. So it wasn't something I did early in life. And then after my thesis, I'd written my thesis, my grad degree, I actually got divorced because I decided that I really needed more in a relationship than that I had. It was a tough decision, very tough decision. But since then, I've really gone from strength to strength, because right now I'm back in the UK, which I probably wouldn't have done if I'd stayed where I was in the relationship. I've had to face a few challenges of my own in terms of health. And my son that I gave birth to is transgender. So I have a transgender daughter. So that took some adjustments. I also decided to write down some of the family stories after I got divorced, as I was here in the UK. And so I'm now a published author, which I really did not see happening. I spent 30 years being in an environment where it was work, home, family, work, home, family. That was 30 years of my life completely. And then, as I said, after I came out of that relationship, I really wanted to look at what I wanted to do. And my daughter was 21, so she was getting to the point where she was becoming more of an adult. So that was helpful as well. So just 4 or 5 years, for example, I decided to start running. I hadn't run since like 12 years old. So I ran 5Ks, which I thought people were going to laugh at me, but fortunately the doctor said, no, you're safe to run a 5K. But I think what I've done the last 10 years, I've done things that I never thought I would ever do. And I like to challenge myself. I've just taken up golf recently. Never played golf before in my whole life, so I'm focused on that. I had to get a car one here. So I actually decided to get an electric car. So I try to do things that interest me and things that will challenge me. Because I absolutely loathe it when people say, oh, you're this age. Oh, you're too old to do that. Say that to me and you get about another 10 minutes of me explaining why I'm not too old for anything. But I also look after my physical health as well, because I think that's our responsibility. So I do try hard to be fit and healthy, because if you don't have your physical health, then you don't get to do any of these fun things. I mean, I want to travel more when we can travel. I want to try things I've never done. I've never done zip lining, but I thought, I might try that one day. That's really who I've become in the last 10 years. So.
Nice. There's so much there I want to talk about. So you said your mom was not the traditional, woman in that time frame, in that era. Is that just in the education realm, or did you sort of have the role model growing up that women should work outside the home, can work outside the home? Did she work outside the home?
Only when we had finished schooling. So we were out of the house anyway, but no, not before then. I think Mum, actually I talked to Mum, because Mum sadly passed away last year with COVID. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
But the nice thing though is I have the book with all her stories in it, which is absolutely brilliant. But I said to Mum, I said, did you set out to become this person who was going to change the direction our family life would go in? She said, no. She said, I don't know what you're talking about. She had no concept of the idea at all. But she said, I just wanted you to have a better life than I had. And that was her only focus. I see it as bigger than that because, for example, when we moved from Lamlash Street, which is where we used to live, to Bexleyheath, Mum said, we are not going to rent a house. We are going to buy a property. Now, this is back in the mid-1960s. All the family was saying, no, Ivy, you should never, ever buy your own property because it's just a millstone around your neck. You are going to be paying for that house forever and a day, and it's just not worth it. You should rent, and then that way you don't have to worry about those things. And if anything goes wrong with the property, then the landlord comes in and deals with it all. And Mum said, no, she said, I've decided this is what we're doing. And so we did. Dad, fortunately, was a very quiet man, do anything for a quiet life. And because of that, there was really no challenge from Dad, really. It was a very female-focused decision-making process. And
so
you go ahead.
I was just going to say, so did you, having a mom like that, a very strong mom who was very determined, and sounds like she kind of had a really good handle on what she wanted and what direction she wanted to head in. Did you find yourself being like that when you got married as well?
Not initially. And I think when I reflect back on that, I think if you have somebody in your life that's very focused and knows exactly where we're all going, and they're not really looking for a lot of input when you're a child in particular, because in those days children were seen and not heard. There was no such thing as a family discussion because children weren't really allowed into that discussion process. In fact, women were only just barely allowed in that discussion process. So I think for me, I've evolved over time. In my marriage, I was probably fairly quiet, but frustrated at the same time. I hadn't quite put all the pieces together. And I think writing the book and talking to Mum and thinking about what she had done and talking to her about, well, why did you move from London, where all my friends were, and move out to Bexleyheath, as I said, where I am now. She said it was because we would have a better life and you would have a better life. So at the time I was a bit frustrated with the move. Remember, there's no internet in those days. So once you left an area, you lost all contact with everybody. And by the time I'd written the book and talked to Mum about it, I thought, I really do understand why she did that. And in terms of when I became more assertive, I think it was in my early 50s when I...
So did it correspond with menopause? I love
you know what? It probably did.
Yeah. I love talking about that with women because it's, like I have shared on the podcast before, I've always been a people pleaser. And then all of a sudden you just hit a certain age, and the ability to, pause between what comes into your brain and what comes out of your mouth, it kind of shortens a little bit.
It does.
It does. And I think it's very, we laugh about it, and, and there's so many memes out there and jokes about women at this age, but I really just am enjoying that part of midlife where, you just feel a little bit more confident about who you are and your ability to share your thoughts and your perspective. And you don't care as much if someone agrees with it or not. And I just find that interesting. So it usually happens around the menopause time. So how did your husband react to you all of a sudden going from someone who was a little bit more quiet to now having a little bit more of a voice and an opinion on things?
He wasn't happy, which was probably another nail in the coffin of the relationship.
Right.
But
Right.
as I said, in my early 50s, I was 52, I thought, I think I'm going to do a couple of courses to see if I could do a graduate degree. So I told him this, and he looked at me as if I was mad. And he basically said to me, well, I don't know why you're bothering, because it's not going to help. You're too old now. If you wanted to do that, you should have done that years ago. You do it now, it's just going to be a waste of money, time, resources. And I thought, how dare you? Now, the winning thing I had is that his mother was a school teacher before she retired. And so I knew if I told her that I was going to do a graduate degree, she would be so behind me with that. And so at that point, he couldn't say too much. But no, there was absolutely no encouragement. I would work 9 to 5. I'd come back, I'd prepare supper, 6 to 8 every night, Monday to Thursday, and Sunday evenings. I would be doing coursework, obviously. But so I basically said to people, look, okay, this is what we're having for supper tonight. Nobody offered to cook anything for me or anything. I had to prepare everything. But yeah, every night for 2 hours, I was there on the computer doing reading and all sorts of things. But yeah, absolutely no help from him. And I think, honestly, the relationship wasn't great. And then it sort of went on from there. Then I got my graduate degree, and I was 58. And
Wow.
at that point,
Good for you.
For the convocation, for the graduation ceremony, I went there in person because people were saying to me, oh, don't bother, they'll just send it to you in the post, in the mail. And I said, no, I've worked hard for this. So I went up to Halifax, Nova Scotia. I got the cap and gown. I've got the photographs. I crossed that stage and I got my diploma in my hands. And yeah, so I think...
So what was your intention? I mean, when you were thinking about getting this graduate degree, did you have something in mind that you wanted to do with it? Or was it just something that would be more like an accomplishment that you could feel proud of yourself for?
Well, I was in a position, I was in a management position, but I wanted to do more than that. And I knew, and I had looked around, obviously, anyone who had done any further education, when it came to choosing somebody for a position, they usually got the job. So they wanted somebody highly educated.
Sure.
So I'd seen that. I talked to a lot of people at work. Everyone was encouraging, but the family weren't as encouraging. But I think it was twofold. It was that, but I also wanted to know, could I still do that? Because I got my degree when I was in my early 30s. I literally hadn't done any coursework of any kind in those intervening 20 odd years. And so I wanted to know if I could do it. And I was getting A grades, as it turned out. So I was thinking, wow,
nice.
This is good. But I think I was very focused as well. There was nothing going to interfere with any of this.
Yeah. And, I mean, congratulations, because that is no small accomplishment. I feel like I don't want to downplay or say anything that seems negative about, this midlife part, but you got to acknowledge that it gets a little bit harder to learn new things. You have some brain fog. Well, not everybody, but I'm just generalizing. You're distracted by other things like aches and pains, and some people develop some health conditions at this part of life. So I think you should be very proud of yourself. It's no small feat to take on something that big in midlife and see it through. So congratulations.
I'll tell you what I
awesome.
did find out is that, so I, with the thinking, oh, my brain cells, well, I have enough brain cells to cope with the coursework. But what I did find is if I exercised for 20 minutes before I sat down for my 2-hour session, I thought so much more clearly than if I just sort of been in an office all day sort of thing. So I made exercise my focus because the extra oxygen and so on. And my diet was really healthy because I wanted to maximize any resources I could to help me do really well.
Yeah. And you said something when you were, talking initially about, being healthy, being a focus for you. What I'd love to say, Jill, is, if you don't take the time to, take care and be mindful of your health, you're going to be distracted by it. So you can either be proactive or you can be reactive to it, right?
Oh, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I know perhaps we always as we become older, we do take better care of our bodies, or we have to. But yeah, I do. I eat lots of vegetables, lots of fruits, lots of lean proteins. I exercise. I do everything I can. And I don't really have any aches or pains either, by the way. That's the other thing that bothers me is even ads on TV, commercials, and they'll say, oh, they see a picture of somebody in their 60s. Oh, you've got a bad back. And I mean, I have issues with my back, but I've also, if I walk a lot, I have no issues at all. So, and it sort of helps that I have the healthcare background, and I was involved in ergonomics for all those years as well. So I have that sort of mindset. Sure. But it is possible. I mean, I'm not down the gym 24 hours a day. No, I do about an hour of exercise a day. I was swimming this morning for an hour. Tomorrow I'm practicing at the driving range for an hour. But I try to do something every morning for about an hour. And the rest of it is just healthy eating. Yeah.
So Jill, at what point did you weren't someone so when I first heard your story, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk to her because I've always wanted to write a book. It's something I've thought about since I was a child, but it sounds like that wasn't something that you thought about when you were younger.
No.
Tell me about that process. How did you get to that point where you wanted to write a book?
Well, what happened was, I guess I found the emotional reason to write the stories down. That eventually became a book and then published book. My uncle, who used to live just across the road from here, I went to see him. We were in Canada. We came over just to see him, for a couple of hours while we were over here, seeing Mum and Dad. And he said, he showed me some war stories he had. And it's just a few he'd written down, like 4 or 5 stories, like being at D-Day, doing the Atlantic crossings between US and Britain, bringing over the food and resources. And they said, I think I'd like to write a book. I said, oh, that's a nice idea, Uncle. Very nice man. He actually lived with us at Lamlash Street. So we're very, very close. And sadly, 3 months later, poor man had passed on. And then, so I was going through his flat, his apartment, and because we had to clear it out to sell it. And I found his little notes from his war times. And at the same time as that was going on, my dad was starting to have a lot of memory problems. Eventually, he died of Alzheimer's a few years later. Yes, we had a lot of family losses in the past few years. And so Uncle had left the flat to myself, my brother. So we had some unexpected money. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I took some of that money if I needed help, to write down some of his stories. And then I started thinking about Mum's stories. The family stories, the ones you go to weddings and the aunts and uncles are sitting there talking about this relative and that relative.
I love that.
I thought, wouldn't that be nice? It sort of grew from there. And so then I had 2 lots of stories. And as it ended up, I actually have both stories amalgamated into one, which is what I've done in the book of Lamlash Street. Some flashbacks to the wartime, but it's also based in the 1960s. And from that point, I realized I had enough information to maybe make a book. And so at that point, because I had some finances, I had a book coach just help me with some of the structure and that sort, because I've never written anything before. Right. But I found the more I did it, the more I really enjoy it. I mean, I've always written a lot. I've always journaled forever, probably on a daily basis, write about my feelings and my frustrations and so on. So I've always writing, always very much orientated towards having my feelings put down on paper and expressing myself through words. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. And it sort of grew from there. And then somebody said, well, have you thought of publishing? And I thought, well, not really. So I didn't start out to be a published author. It sort of grew organically from where I was. But I'm so happy now it's there. I'm so happy. I was going to be happy if one person had bought my book, but more than one person has. And I thought that person might be my mother, basically. I didn't think anyone else would. But it's been quite a journey, and I'd recommend it to anybody, by the way. So I wasn't intimidated because I didn't even think I was going to get this far, but I have, and I'm thrilled to death. Absolutely.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so awesome. So how many years does the book span?
It's just 1 year. It
Okay.
does flashbacks, as I said, to World War II, but it starts in Christmas of 1962 and finishes in Christmas of 1963, which was a year of tremendous change for our family. A lot of things were happening in those days around work opportunities, and people were moving all the time. There was huge amounts of loss, especially for us kids, where your aunts and uncles who were living down the street, you move, and then you have no aunts and uncles anywhere near you. And as we know, it's no internet, no emails. Children were not allowed to use the telephone because it was too expensive to use the telephone. So once you were gone from that physical environment, you really were cut off completely. So it's very, very difficult time. And the other reason it starts and ends with Christmas is I love Christmas. And we had amazing, like 200 people at a Christmas party.
Wow.
A huge old Victorian house. People will be dancing up and down time to the music. The floors will be flexing, the wooden floors. They had to take, my aunt used to live underneath where the party took place. They used to have to take the light fixtures down before the party started. So the light fixture wasn't damaged because it would bounce up and down all the time.
Oh, goodness. That sounds like a good time.
It was great. Lots of music. Family everywhere. It was amazing. Yeah.
So how, do you mind if I ask, how old were you when you started writing the book?
I must have been, I don't know, about 63, 64.
Wow, that's awesome. And how long did it take you from start to finish? Do you know?
It took me 3.5 years.
Well, I mean, you said you never intended it to be a book, really,
No.
but I'm just so fascinated by, the fact that you have that sort of legacy. You have all those memories and you've written them down. That's just amazing.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's especially since Mum passed on last year. If I want to, I can just open the book and look back at the story. So I said to Mum, way before then, I said, "Look, you're immortal. Do you know that?" She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I know. Obviously, I'm in the book as well." But it's a bit. I've written stories about what we did back at Lamlash Street in the 1960s. And these are going to be available to anybody on the planet that wants to buy them. I said, everyone will know about you and what you did and what you did for us as a family. And I don't think she even then really understood the concept, but that's what's happened. And it's fantastic because I can just read through the chapters and go back to those days. And so she's gone, but she's still here at the same time.
Yeah. My mom passed away in 2012, and there have been so many times over the years where I've thought, oh, I wish I could have asked her that question. I wish I knew more about this, but you always think you have time.
Yeah.
You think you have time to ask all the questions, and then suddenly you don't. So I love the idea that you have all that written down in a book.
It is.
That's
it's amazing. A comfort. It is. It was actually last weekend, this weekend just passed, was the anniversary date of her passing. And it could have been really quite sad. I mean, it was sad in that sense, but I thought, you know what? I've actually written down the stories, so they're never going to disappear. They are always going to be here. And that to me was something I didn't write the book for that reason, but it's a real bonus when I look back on it now.
Yeah. I interviewed another author on the podcast, Marie Scott, and if memory serves me correct, she also was someone who had written journals and turned it into a book. And yeah, in fact, it was Marie, because she had talked about her, her life with her husband, and he's deceased now, but all their travels together and things. And yeah, so I find that fascinating. I wonder how many women out there are, listening today that are big journalers that, they could look back at their story and turn it into a book that can live on as a legacy for many years to come.
But that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think as well, my daughter said to me, because I was talking about, I must write these stories down. And so my daughter said to me one day, Mum, you're retired now. Why don't you write this book that you're talking about? I said, well, I don't know. Go ahead and write it. Anyway, so I thought, okay, maybe I'll do this. But she writes as well. And that's the thing I also love about the fact that I have this published book is that you're a role model for your kids. No matter what you do or don't do, the kids are watching everything you do. And so that's one of the things that drives me as well, that I want to be a role model for Clara. So she has absolutely no excuse for not achieving things in her own life. So when you have a mum that's done a lot of stuff, then it's very hard for the kids to say, but I can't do it because. Right.
And so you said, self-sabotage can keep women down. So tell me a little bit about your thinking there.
Oh, yes. I mean, I was, for many, many years, I was very shy. It wasn't helpful being in a negative relationship, because at the end of the day, if you're in a relationship with somebody that is very negative, then you tend to believe them and you lose yourself and you don't realize you've lost yourself. So that's always a very difficult thing. So yeah, even now, I'm uncertain about certain things. I used to have a lot of anxiety. I had no confidence speaking up in meetings, all those things that, that we all struggle with. And then over the last 10 years, my hair went from brown and now it's blonde. And I've done all these different things, like writing a book, now running, and things I never thought I'd do. And I find out that you don't have to do them all at once. Just start with one thing and work your way through it and then go on to the next thing. Because what happens, that as soon as you have a little bit of confidence in one area, it's something comes up and say, maybe I can do that. So it takes a while. You don't suddenly wake up the next morning. It's like, oh, I can do anything. I'm superwoman sort of thing. No, it's not like that.
But sort of one success kind of builds upon the other success, and next thing you know, you're writing books and you're ziplining.
Exactly, that's right. Or you're podcasting like this. Yeah, but I didn't foresee this. I mean, somebody had said to me, "Yes, you'll be interviewed," and no, nobody's going to want to hear what I have to say. But yeah, it grows. So just start with the one success, and then you'll find that you change, your life changes. The people you're interacting with change as well. So you're with people that have done a little bit more in their life, and then you start to think it's normal to do more in your life. And eventually 10 years later, it's like, wow, what happened? I mean, things have changed tremendously. So yeah, never be intimidated by it, because you couldn't have been more unsure and self-conscious than I was. No, you go back like 15 years ago, I was struggling in everything, absolutely everything. I was on medication, everything. And now it's different, very different, in a good way.
Yeah. Sounds like it. So Jill, tell everybody what the name of your book is. We haven't really said that out loud yet.
Okay, it's Lamlash Street is the name of the book. It's Lamlash. It's actually the name of an island in northern Scotland. That's where the name came from. But Lamlash Street is the name of the street that I was living on. And it's available through any of the Amazons.com, .co.uk, .ca. And because it's an unusual name, if you just put Lamlash Street into your search engine, it pops up pretty quick, actually.
Okay, great. I will actually put a link in the show notes so everybody can find it very quickly. Where else can they find you? Are you on all the socials?
I have a website, which is jmphillips, PHILLIPS, author.com. So you can actually, on that website, you can see all the photographs of my family. And then there's a little piece by each of the photographs. So you know who, my mother's there, my uncle, my brother.
I saw that. That's really neat.
All the characters in the book, as it were, they are there. And I do blogging occasionally. I'm trying to get better at that, but I have done a few blogs. And one of the blogs was about, as we touched on earlier, how special it was for me, even though Mum's gone, that I still have the book to remember her and what she did. So that you can get that as well. Also, I have a Facebook author page, the two link together. So if you go to my website, there's a little button there for my Facebook author page. So those are my two social media sites.
Great. I'll make sure to put all of that in the show notes today. I have two more questions for you before we end today. First of all, what's next for Jill? Any more books in your future?
I'm thinking about books. Actually, I just got an email yesterday to talk to my book coach because I got some ideas and I'm in two minds which way to go. I could do the next book, the sequel to the one I've done, or I've done so much in the last 10 years and people ask me quite a bit about, so how did you get to where you are in life? Where did you start? I don't know whether maybe my next book might be around more of that topic, more like self-development. So I'm sort of thinking about it, but there will be a next book. And I can tell you this, once you've written one book, because I struggled with it. I mean, it's sometimes there were months went by and I did nothing, and other times it was so easy to write. But what I found is when you're doing the second book, it's much easier. The words flow out of your fingertips so much more easy. I think you have an idea of the structure, where you're going. I mean, it took me forever, for example, to think, how many chapters shall I have in this book? I've never done that before in my life. So it gets easier.
So you recommend what did you call it? A book coach or an author
it's
coach?
Working for me. Yeah. So what that person does is you say what you want to what you're thinking of doing. And then you write your stories down. They don't do any of the writing for you, none of that. But what they do, they, for example, I had my chapters and he read through the book. He said, have you ever thought of bookending your story with Christmas? And I said, what's bookending? It means you start and finish with the same event, right? And so I said, no, that's a good idea. So then I took that and I thought, oh, that's good. And the other thing he said to me, he said, now you need to make this a page turner. He said, you need to have some sort of thing that's people are going to be interested in as they go through the book. And he said, well, what about romance? And I thought, you're joking. I'm barely writing a book and you want to write about romance. And he said, where would the Titanic be, the movie, without the romance in the story? He said, that's really just a tool, a way of getting you to see what all the boat looks like and the other stories. But he said, that's what ties the story together, the romance. And And so I said, well, yeah, there was this person called Anthony, and he was my first love. He said, that's it, you write about that. And I said, oh, I'm sitting with my glass of wine thinking, what on earth am I going to do? But it's in there. So there you go.
Does Anthony know he was the first love of your life and that you're he's in your book?
You know what? He doesn't. I haven't heard from him. And I'm under a lot of pressure now because people keep saying to me, what happened to him? Do you know him? And I thought, you know what? I may actually have to just track this guy down and see what he's up to and tell him that I wrote about him.
There you go.
It's fun, I didn't expect this.
Yes, for sure. So, Jill, the name of the podcast is What Women Want Today. So tell me, what do you think women want today?
I think that women want the support to be able to do whatever they choose to do in life. I think they would like their family and friends, when they come along and say, you know what, I think I'm going to go to Borneo and live with the monkeys for a month, or whatever your thing is. I would think what they really want is for the people around to say, oh, why is that? And really take an interest in why they want to do that. And then say, how can we help you to do that? They don't want somebody to say, no, at your age, or no, you can't do that, because they really want support for their dreams, because so much of a woman's life is spent giving to the family, and still is. I think
I love that. You just hit me right in the heart.
But it is, where our heart and soul is going to our family. I think what they really want is their turn, their chance now to have something given back to them. And I think that's how you do it for a woman. You support them when you let them know what your dreams are.
Absolutely love that, Jill. And you didn't even pause a beat. You had that you had that ready, and I didn't even tell you in advance I was going to ask you that question. But no, I think you're absolutely correct. And if I could just add a little bit to it, I would say, I think women tend to feel like they're selfish, if they try to do something for themselves. And, what you said there is so spot on. If you could just encourage, who's ever listening out there, if you hear this and, there's someone in your life that you could just encourage and help them to not feel selfish, but to help them feel like, go for it. This is your time. You've raised your family. You've done all the things, right? To do something for yourself. Take good care of you. I'd love to say that. Take good care of you.
And you know what? When you do that, then your family see you differently. You're happier and everybody's happier.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much. Well, Jill, thank you. This time has just flown by today. I'm so glad that you were able to make time in your schedule to be here with me today. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. If you'd like to continue the conversation, come on over and join our private Facebook group, What Women Want Today. I'd love to hang out with you some more there. Any resources mentioned in today's episode will be in the show notes. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at What Women Want Today Podcast, or visit my website at whatwomenwanttoday.com. Please remember to subscribe, download, and share. Leave me a review. It helps other amazing women find the show and become a member of our community. One last thing for you today. You are not alone. You are worthy of love and a fulfilled life. Now it's time to go after it.